On June 28, 1947, a special ceremony was held at the Grand Hall of the Allied headquarters in Tokyo, the Japanese Warship Compensation Lottery. This ceremony would determine the final fate of the ships of the Imperial Japanese Navy's combined fleet. 4 countries participated in the lottery: the United States, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, and China. The Chinese representative, Colonel Ma Deshien, casually drew a ship and, by chance, selected the Yukikaze destroyer. Today, let's tell the legendary story of the Yukikaze destroyer and see how this ship survived countless battles to become a lucky ship and a combat legend during World War II. The origins of the Yukikaze, the arms race before World War II. In 1936, Japan made the decisive decision to give its navy a major upgrade. That year, they pulled out of the London Naval Treaty, clearly signaling their intention to break free from constraints and fully commit to building their forces. At the time, the Japanese Navy regarded the United States as its primary potential adversary, but the treaty set the naval ratio between Japan and the U.S. at 3-5. This number made it obvious that, in the event of a conflict, Japan's fleet would be at a disadvantage. Imagine a naval confrontation like a fight between 2 groups. One is outnumbered. What can they do? The Japanese Navy quickly realized that they couldn't win by sheer numbers, so they decided to focus on quality, specifically on improving their destroyers. At the time, older ships like the Fubuki, Hatsuharu, and Shiritsu classes, though once powerful, were already outdated by the late 1930s. They were slow, had weak firepower, and lacked stability. Essentially, they were no match for modern ships. It was like racing an old car against a sports car, where the old car couldn't keep up. So, the Japanese Navy rolled up its sleeves and designed a new class of destroyers, the Kagero-class. The name alone sounded imposing, like the scorching heat waves on a summer afternoon. But the Kagero-class wasn't just put together haphazardly. The goal was clear. They wanted a destroyer that could reach extreme speeds, pack formidable firepower, and remain stable in rough seas. Picture this ship slicing through the water, with waves scattering everywhere while the ship itself remained steady, and its guns firing precisely. The designers worked late into the night, figuring out how to make it fast, powerful, and stable enough to survive the harsh battlefield conditions. When the Kagero-class was finally launched, it became a lifeline for the Japanese Navy. Among the Kagero-class, one ship stood out, the 8th ship of the class, the Yukikaze. The name itself was poetic, like the winter wind carrying snowflakes, light yet deadly. But the Yukikaze was more than just a beautiful name. It truly earned its place in the history of World War II. As part of the Kagero-class, the Yukikaze was fast as a runaway horse, its firepower capable of overwhelming the enemy, and it was steady and unshakable even in the most turbulent seas. The Japanese Navy knew exactly what they were doing. While the U.S. fleet had a numerical advantage, Japan believed that if their destroyers were agile and powerful enough, they could disrupt the enemy's rhythm and even win against superior numbers. The Yukikaze later traveled throughout the Pacific during World War II, witnessing countless battles and surviving one hard-fought battle after another, becoming a lucky charm for the Japanese Navy. The First Battle of the Yukikaze, the Philippines Campaign. Speaking of the Yukikaze, this Kagero-class destroyer's story truly begins with its first combat mission. On December 12, 1941, before dawn, the Japanese Navy sent the Yukikaze to assist in the landing on Luzon Island in the Philippines. Picture this. The sea was churning, and the Yukikaze, like a young man on his first adventure, loaded with shells and anticipation, charged into the battle, cutting through the waves. But just as they arrived, a surprise air raid came from the American forces. P-40 fighters screeched through the sky, diving down to strafe the ship with machine gun fire. The sound of bullets tearing through the air was deafening, and the sailors on board must have had their hearts in their throats. But guess what? The air raid somehow missed the Yukikaze, with bullets splashing into the sea around it, yet the ship itself came away unscathed. It was as if the heavens themselves had placed a protective shield around the ship. Its first combat mission was nerve-wracking yet safe, and anyone who witnessed it would have said, "This ship's got something special." From that day onward, the Yukikaze became known as the Lucky Ship. Imagine it. Amidst the ceaseless gunfire and explosions on the battlefield, other ships were either blown to pieces or quietly sank beneath the waves. But the Yukikaze seemed to have some sort of aura, always managing to escape the danger. The Battle of Luzon was just the beginning of its legendary run. In the years that followed, the ship proved its luck time and again, surviving dangerous situations that would have sunk other ships. In naval combat, torpedoes would come flying in, and other vessels might have been hit and sunk, but the Yukikaze danced around them, swerving left and right, never letting a single torpedo come close. When air raids came, bombs rained down from the sky, creating towering splashes of water next to the ship, yet the Yukikaze remained steady, with barely a chip off its paint. This remarkable, almost unbelievable survival left the crew joking, wondering if the ship had secretly prayed to some divine protector. The legend of the Lucky Ship spread far and wide, becoming not only the pride of the Japanese Navy, but also a source of awe for its enemies. The Yukikaze sailed across the Pacific from Pearl Harbor to Midway, and eventually to the final battle of Okinawa. It witnessed the full fury of the war, but always managed to return safely. Some said it was due to the ship's excellent design. Others credited the skill of the crew, but many believed it was simply because the ship had the favor of the goddess of luck herself. By the time the war ended, the Yukikaze was still afloat, having become a legendary ship in the Kagero-class. Yukikaze faces death, multiple narrow escapes. Speaking of the Yukikaze, the year 1942 was when it truly shone, especially during the Battle of Midway in August, which marked the beginning of its lucky ship fame. At that time, the Japanese Navy was brimming with confidence, bringing 4 of its main aircraft carriers to charge towards Midway, intending to surprise the Americans. However, the battlefield was chaotic, with American dive bombers dropping bombs onto the sea like they were throwing dumplings. The explosions rang in their ears as Japanese carriers were bombarded one after another, flames shooting high into the air, smoke billowing, and the 4 main carriers were almost completely destroyed. But in the midst of this chaos, the Yukikaze danced like a nimble rabbit, darting between bombs and artillery fire. Water columns shot up like fountains around it, while nearby ships turned into wreckage, yet the Yukikaze stayed steady, not even a screw loosened. It was truly a bizarre sight on the battlefield. When the battle ended, while others were busy retrieving the wreckage, the Yukikaze simply dusted itself off and continued patrolling. Anyone who saw it couldn't help but think, this luck is just unbelievable. Just 2 months later, the Yukikaze was again in the South Pacific, showing its presence. This time, it was assigned to be the close escort of the aircraft carrier Ryuho. As usual, the battle was intense, with American planes screaming down, bombs and torpedoes flying in all directions. The Ryuho couldn't withstand the onslaught and was left severely damaged, with 148 airmen perishing in the flames. In the end, it had to limp back home, badly wounded. As for the Yukikaze, it stayed by its side the whole time, shielding the carrier from fire, with torpedoes whizzing by and bombs exploding nearby, yet it emerged untouched, as if protected by some magical shield. The Ryuho was a wreck, but the Yukikaze remained clean and unscathed, continuing to sail proudly on the ocean. The scene was like something out of a movie. While its comrades fell, it stood tall, so lucky that it made people question reality. After these 2 major battles, at Midway and in the South Pacific, the Yukikaze's reputation was solidified. Who in the Japanese Navy didn't know the lucky symbol by then? Sailors would talk about it with admiration, saying it must have been blessed by the emperor himself. And with it out at sea, you felt like you were granted a few more lives. From its first battle at Luzon Island to these 2 major engagements, the Yukikaze cemented its luck with one miraculous escape after another, becoming a living legend on the battlefield. From then on, every time it went on a mission, sailors loved to follow it, believing that with it around, they would always make it home safely. Yukikaze, the miracle of the Battle of the Solomon Sea. Speaking of the Yukikaze, the lucky ship, The Third Battle of the Solomon Sea on November 12, 1942, was another spectacular chapter in its legendary story. The battlefield that day was chaotic, with the sea echoing with the sounds of artillery, bombs raining from the sky, and warships exchanging fire in a battle to the death. This time, the Yukikaze had a crucial role to protect the battleship Bairu and help it break through the encirclement. The enemy's attack was as fierce as disturbing a hornet's nest, with bombers diving down to drop bombs and torpedoes flying through the water. The tension in the air was so thick you could almost feel it. But look at the Yukikaze. It moved like a nimble cat, weaving through the gunfire and explosions. Not only did it escape unharmed, but it also risked airstrikes to pull the Bairu out of the danger zone. Amidst the crashing waves and the deafening sound of artillery, the Yukikaze stayed as steady as Mount Tai, ensuring the Bairu escaped the encirclement. With such bravery and luck, who wouldn't give it a thumbs up? The captain of the ship later recalled the battle as being truly thrilling, describing the situation as though they were protected by the gods. The battle was at its peak when American bombers came charging, ready to take out the Yukikaze and Bairu. Just as it seemed they would be doomed, the weather suddenly took a turn for the worse. A storm rolled in with dark clouds overhead, howling winds, and heavy rain pounding down. Visibility dropped to nothing, like a thick fog enveloping them. The American planes circled in the sky but couldn't find their targets and had no choice but to retreat, cursing all the while. The storm acted like a divine shield, providing the Yukikaze with a natural defense, allowing it to once again escape the clutches of death. The captain stood on the deck, watching the rain pour down, likely grinning from ear to ear. This luck was even more outrageous than winning the lottery. Thus, the Third Battle of the Solomon Sea added another bold stroke to the Yukikaze's lucky legend. From its first battle at Luzon Island to Midway, the South Pacific, and this chaotic battle, the Yukikaze danced on the edge of death time and time again, but somehow never faltered. While other ships sank or were severely damaged, the Yukikaze always shook off the dust and kept going, becoming a living symbol of the Japanese Navy. Sailors would talk about it with admiration, saying the ship must have had a divine protector, because how else could it keep escaping danger? Thanks to its remarkable luck and solid strength beyond mere chance, the Yukikaze became one of the most legendary warships of World War II. Yukikaze, the eyes of the sky in the radar war. Speaking of the legendary stories of the Yukikaze, March 1, 1943, marked another jaw-dropping moment in its saga. On this day, it was assigned a rather challenging mission to escort a convoy across the Bismarck Sea. The sea was calm at first, but as soon as they entered the area, a massive American air raid hit like a long-anticipated downpour. Imagine 300 bombers flying in formation, the roar of their engines deafening, as bombs rained down like they were being dropped from a great height, causing explosions that created massive water columns, like a grand fountain show. The Japanese fleet was in dire straits, with transport ships being hit one after another, flames rising, debris flying, and the scene resembling the apocalypse. But there, amidst the chaos, the Yukikaze seemed like a superhero in an invisible cloak, weaving through the bombings, not a single bomb even coming close. The ship remained spotless, as pristine as ever, not even losing a bit of paint. The luck was so extraordinary, it would make anyone want to kneel in awe. What's even more incredible is that not only did the Yukikaze stay unharmed, but it also played the role of a savior. With the battlefield in shambles, sailors were struggling in the water, crying for help. The Yukikaze, under the pressure of airstrikes, darted through the chaos and rescued one comrade after another. The waves were raging and gunfire was still exploding in the air, but the Yukikaze remained steady, like a sea hero, maintaining formation while rescuing men. After the battle, while the Japanese fleet suffered heavy losses and nearly all the transport ships were destroyed, the Yukikaze was unharmed and had rescued many lives, truly an eye-popping display of valor. The Naval High Command was so impressed that they not only acknowledged its luck, but also recognized its versatile capabilities, dubbing it the Lucky Ship. They outfitted it with a new shortwave radar warning system, boosting its reconnaissance abilities. Now, the Yukikaze was not only relying on luck, but had elevated its intelligence-gathering capabilities, becoming a true cheat code on the battlefield, able to detect the enemy from far away. Thus, the battle in the Bismarck Sea further cemented the Yukikaze's legendary status. Sailors talked about it with admiration, claiming that the ship seemed like a divine protector, always appearing at the crucial moments to help. From its first battle at Luzon Island to Midway and this air raid, the Yukikaze repeatedly escaped the jaws of death and even helped others along the way. With its perfect blend of luck and skill, it gained widespread respect. Later, after being equipped with radar, the Yukikaze became even more formidable, running across Pacific battlefields and becoming a living symbol of the Japanese Navy. Yukikaze, the radar prophet in night battles. Speaking of the Yukikaze and its glorious moments as the lucky ship, the night battle on July 12, 1943, is undoubtedly a story that will leave anyone in awe. That night, the sky was as dark as ink, and the sea was eerily calm, with only the sound of waves slapping the ship. This time, the Yukikaze was equipped with its new shortwave radar warning system, practically giving it the ability to see miles ahead. Sure enough, with 30 minutes to go before the American assault began, the Yukikaze sensed the enemy's presence. The radar screen lit up with flashing red dots, and the sailors immediately went into high alert. At the command of the captain, the ship went into combat mode. Imagine this. While the night was still silent, with no gunfire yet, the Yukikaze was already like a prophet, warning everyone, "Be careful, the enemy is coming." This quick response gave the Japanese forces precious extra time to prepare, providing a much-needed breather. Unfortunately, the American assault came with fierce intensity. As soon as the guns started firing, it was like setting off firecrackers. Explosions rocked the air. The Japanese Jinsu-class light cruiser couldn't withstand the onslaught and was bombarded relentlessly, flames shooting into the sky as it slowly sank beneath the waves. But the Yukikaze? Not only did it use its radar to give an early warning, but it also demonstrated impressive naval combat skills. In the pitch-black darkness, it moved swiftly and evasively like a shadow. The enemy shells whizzed past, but the Yukikaze dodged them expertly, while returning fire with precise and powerful shots, pushing back the American assault. Even more impressively, it had the heavy responsibility of escorting 1,200 Army soldiers to safety. Amid the chaos of the battlefield, with wreckage floating on the sea, the Yukikaze calmly led the retreat, ensuring that not a single soldier was left behind. This combination of luck and skill was truly remarkable. By the end of the night battle, the Yukikaze had certainly earned the spotlight. The Jinsu was sunk and other ships suffered significant losses, but the Yukikaze achieved the greatest victory with the least cost, successfully escorting 1,200 lives to safety. Anyone who saw this couldn't help but say, "Impressive." After the battle, sailors spoke of the ship with admiration, saying it wasn't just lucky, it was a true hero of the battlefield. The captain, standing on the deck, likely had a smile on his face as he looked at the calm sea in the distance, knowing that this battle was well worth it. From the Bismarck Sea to this night battle, the Yukikaze proved time and again that it was not only the lucky symbol, but also a formidable force that could fight and rescue with equal skill. Yukikaze's final trial, the Battle of Leyte Gulf and the escape from death. Speaking of the Yukikaze and its battlefield stories, the Battle of Leyte Gulf in October 1944 is a chapter that makes you sweat with nervousness, but also applaud in admiration. At that time, the Leyte Gulf battlefield was as chaotic as a big party. The Japanese Navy planned to throw the Yukikaze into the front lines to face the enemy head-on. However, as with any plan, things didn't go as expected, and an unexpected training accident caused some trouble. A key part, the propulsion system, broke down with a loud snap, shattering Yukikaze's dream of participating in the battle. The sailors were left staring at the smoking machinery, their faces turning pale. With no other choice, the fleet had to temporarily change the mission and assign Yukikaze the role of an escort, ensuring the fleet's logistics. Who would have thought that this shift would add another bold stroke to Yukikaze's legendary story? The escort mission may sound simple, but in reality, there's no quiet moment in battle. Not long after starting, as Yukikaze escorted the fleet, American airstrikes came charging in. Aircraft roared as they swooped down, dropping bombs like rain on the sea. One of the transport ships in the fleet failed to avoid the bombardment and was blown to pieces in a massive explosion, with fragments scattering through the air. But the Yukikaze? It didn't just rely on luck this time. It showed off its true skills. The radar system beeped as it locked onto enemy aircraft positions, and the gun spun into action, aiming with precision. With a few sharp bursts, 2 American planes were shot down before they even had the chance to drop their bombs, plummeting into the sea in a trail of black smoke. The sailors on deck cheered as they watched the enemy planes crash, feeling like they were playing a video game with a cheat code. It was incredibly satisfying. Thanks to this move, the Yukikaze held its ground during the air raid, protecting the rest of the fleet and preventing further losses. It was textbook calm under pressure. After the Battle of Leyte Gulf, the Yukikaze's reputation as the immortal ship was firmly cemented. Initially, after the propulsion system broke down, everyone thought it was done for. But who knew that when it switched to the escort mission, it still carried the entire fleet? When the air raid came, while other ships panicked, Yukikaze remained steady, even taking down 2 enemy planes in the process. Its combination of luck and skill was so impressive, it was just too cool to ignore. After the battle, sailors spoke of it with awe, saying the ship was born fearless, always able to turn the tide in critical moments. The Japanese Navy had no answers for it, saying calling it a lucky symbol wasn't enough. It should be called the Phoenix instead. Yukikaze, a journey of life and death. As the war grew more intense, Yukikaze, the lucky ship, became almost like a lifeline for the Japanese Navy, constantly being called upon as a rescue ship. December 21, 1944, is a classic example of this. On that day, it single-handedly escorted the massive Congo battleship. The sea was rough, and the 2 ships were slowly making their way, when suddenly, an enemy submarine silently approached like a ghost beneath the waves. In an instant, there was a muffled sound. The Congo was hit by a torpedo. The ship jolted violently, flames shot up, and water began flooding in. Within moments, the giant battleship listed and sank. The sailors on Yukikaze's deck watched in horror, their faces turning pale. But what about Yukikaze? It remained unfazed, skillfully avoiding the torpedo's impact and gliding smoothly across the ocean, seemingly untouched. Its luck was almost divine. While other ships sank or were severely damaged, Yukikaze remained pristine, continuing on with its mission. By April 1945, Yukikaze was once again called into action, this time in Operation Tennichi. This was a mission that sounded like a suicide mission. The Japanese combined fleet stormed out with a bold plan to face off against the U.S. Navy in a fight to the death. However, as in any battlefield, no miracles awaited them. Enemy bombers screamed overhead, dropping bombs while underwater mines lay in wait to explode. Gunfire filled the air, and the scene was chaotic, as if the end of the world had arrived. Yukikaze played its part with fervor, dodging and weaving like a small, agile fish, moving between bombs and mines. The sea erupted with water columns from the explosions, and nearby ships were either engulfed in flames or sinking into the depths, with the entire combined fleet nearly wiped out. But guess what? Yukikaze once again managed to slip through this desperate situation. Although it was filled with smoke and battle damage, its hull remained largely intact. After the battle, surrounded by wreckage, it stood alone like a solitary survivor, drifting quietly, leaving those who saw it both in awe and in deep reflection. From escorting Congo at the end of 1944 to the Tennichi operation in 1945, Yukikaze had an incredibly tough time as a rescue ship. Each mission was like walking on the edge of death. While other ships either sank or exploded, Yukikaze always managed to brush off the dust and keep going. The Japanese Navy held it in high regard, and sailors spoke of it with reverence, saying the ship might truly have an immortal body. From the Battle of Leyte Gulf to the operations around the Philippines, and these two fierce battles, Yukikaze repeatedly proved that it wasn't just relying on luck. It had an indomitable spirit that refused to give up. Yukikaze's final moment. The intertwining of post-war and fate. The story of Yukikaze, the lucky ship, came to an end on August 18, 1945, the day Japan surrendered, marking a lively and miraculous conclusion. As the smoke of war cleared and the sound of cannon fire ceased on the seas, Yukikaze could finally breathe a sigh of relief, ending its combat career. Imagine, this ship had fought from the Philippines to Leyte Gulf, then to Operation Tennichi, with every battle filled with gunfire and brushes with death. Its hull was scorched black by the flames of battle, and it had narrowly escaped countless close calls. Yet, it had made it through all of that, still in one piece, leaving everyone amazed. When the war ended, it was stationed at the port of Korea, but even then, fate had one more test for it. Suddenly, a mine exploded nearby, sending a massive water column into the air. The people nearby were stunned, thinking Yukikaze's luck had finally run out. But what happened? It remained as calm as ever. The ship shook slightly, but miraculously, there wasn't even a hole in its hull. Its luck was almost supernatural. After the war, Yukikaze didn't rest. Its weapons were completely dismantled, and the guns and ammunition were put away. It was repurposed, transforming from a battle-hardened warrior into a transport ship. This time, its mission was to transport Japanese personnel back from Korea to Japan. The seas were still as rough as ever, with occasional scares, but Yukikaze remained steady, making several trips without a single issue. The ship's hold was filled with people, all packed together, chatting about the end of the war and feeling relieved. Yukikaze steadily carried them home, earning praise even from the Allies, who called it the most outstanding ship among the remaining Japanese warships. To think, this ship had gone from a battlefield hero to a transport expert and still received 5-star reviews. Who could see that and not say, this ship is truly a jack of all trades? Yukikaze lived a life more exciting than any novel. During the war, it braved the Pacific with bombs and torpedoes unable to touch it. After the war, it traded its combat gear for a peaceful, productive life. The Japanese Navy treasured it, and the sailors spoke with admiration, saying it was as if the heavens had sent it to make its presence known. From its first battle in 1941 to the final moments of the war in 1945, Yukikaze proved time and again that it wasn't just incredibly lucky, but also had an indomitable spirit. Its post-war transport missions added a warm conclusion to its legendary story, earning the approval even of the Allies. Yukikaze, the legend of the immortal phoenix. The legendary story of Yukikaze is not just a symbol of luck. It is a warship that endured countless life and death trials. Each of its survivals seemed like a divine favor, becoming an immortal legend in the history of naval warfare during World War II. Yukikaze not only represented good fortune, but also carried the honor and sorrow of the Japanese Navy. This is the story of Yukikaze, a destroyer that repeatedly escaped death during World War II. Its fate seemed like a joke with death, but in the end, it left its mark in the cruelty of war. I hope that through today's story, you can gain a deeper understanding of Yukikaze and the history of naval battles in World War II. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See you next time.